The people that are opposing the way Bitcoin development is working right now need a thing to rally around. Over the weekend, a pull request popped up for a new bit. There is a lot of legal framing. There's a lot of moral framing, and Bitcoin improvement proposals and Bitcoin code is not the place to kind of codify out legal frameworks or moral frameworks. It is just, this is a software project and you have to write the code as it exists. And if you start going to legal framing, all you need is for someone to say Bitcoin is illegal. And you're like, well, I guess it's all over then, right? Because like the whole point of this thing is that this is a system of rules, not rulers. It is anarchy encoded in a digital form. You're now bringing a subjective lens to how Bitcoin works. And the fact that Bitcoin works is an objective system. I don't think it's going to go anywhere. If there is a fork, it's going to be such a small minority of hash rate, it's going to fall on its face pretty flat pretty quickly. I think it's going to be a lot of talking and bantering, but at least we're now in a more honest framing of how this should all go, because it was always going to have to be a fork. So at least we're there now.
In the wee hours of Sunday afternoon this past week, a mailing list issue popped up on the Bitcoin developer mailing list and pointed to a PR, which could be Bitcoin's next soft fork. Is Bitcoin's hard money going to get a soft fork? Welcome back to Bitcoin Season 2. Okay, Rob, you're my dancing monkey. I bring you on whenever I need bigger technical chops because things have been moving pretty fast. A lot. This is a technical subject, but we need interpreters to figure out how to explain it less technically. Welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me. I know you have like a list of 7 people and they all said no. So I'm the only one left. So I'm happy to do what I can to help.
Exactly. I don't want to have to go to my 8th person because it would just be Charlie with a mustache.
That's right. That's right.
Actually, let's just explain what this is, because I think nobody, like people as they're seeing this episode are probably seeing like the first news stories pop up. What is this and how does this fit into the filter debate?
3 weeks ago, a Bitcoin developer you and I both know, PortlandHodl, submitted a mailing list proposal, which usually the Bitcoin developer mailing list is where before you write code, or maybe when you're like at the discussion stage of an idea, you want to banter around ideas. It's less technical, like this line of code is wrong, and more like conceptually, is this a good idea or not, where kind of ideas get hashed out. And he had a proposal that the output for any given output would be limited at 520 bytes. Effectively, for most people, what that would mean is that most of how people use Bitcoin today would be unchanged, except your op return would be at most 520 bytes.
Op return's the one that everybody's all mad about right now.
Right.
It's being big, it's being blown open or whatever.
Right,
yeah, that's
right. And this would make a consensus rule that your outputs couldn't be bigger than 520 bytes. And since all Bitcoin addresses are usually, if you have more complicated scripting going on, you just put a hash. That's part of your output. So like it doesn't really matter for the way people use Bitcoin today. And so Portland, just as a way of like, at a consensus level, this is a way you could do to clean things up. It also stops things called DOS, denial of service blocks, which are part of like the great consensus cleanup.
Which I had the last episode I had him on this podcast. He explained this. So shout out, if you're really interested in that, go listen to that one. So.
Yeah. And so this was kind of a 2 birds, 1 stone. Hey, we can prevent DOS blocks from existing. And also like you can limit the op return. Like everyone can kind of like some people from the great consensus cleanup camp would get something. The op return people would get something, call it a day. There were a couple opinions back and forth. The one thing uncertain is that since you'd be reducing this permanently, to open it and make it bigger again would be a hard fork. So people are like, we don't know in the future if quantum proof schemes would require more output space. So we don't want to like turn this off unnecessarily. And so one of the replies though was a Bitcoin developer and one of the BIP maintainer of both Bitcoin Knots as well as the Bitcoin BIP repo, LukeDashjr, had an email in the follow-up, basically kind of carry on saying like this, but also we should reduce like tap leaf functionality. We should remove op if from tap script, and kind of went down the list of like other things he would like added
and
to.
those are like the popular ways of storing JPEGs. I mean, those are like there's
the inscription envelope.
There's like infinite ones, and these are like the top 5 most popular ones.
Yeah. And so no one replied to Luke in that thread. I would say because it was slightly off topic, right? If you have an idea that you want to do something, you make your own email with your own title describing what you're doing. But he wrote in reply to Portland's thread. No one really replied or kind of engaged with it. And then on GitHub over the weekend, a pull request popped up for a new BIP. This new BIP basically takes Luke's idea from the mailing list and tries to do a full codified Bitcoin improvement proposal instantiating this. There is no code yet that is public, but it is trying to basically take the couple of sentences that Luke did and write a full BIP, because BIPs usually contain what's called a motivation section for why are you making this improvement proposal, implementation timelines. And again, this is all talking about consensus changes. So you now need to deal with something, coordination, right? Like, how are you turning this thing on? How long is it going to work? And the proposal to get into it is going through the things I just described. So removing op returns larger than 84 bytes, like the standard limit that was prior to core version 30 in there. Removing the op if in tap script. So you can't use, if you're using a taproot address, you can't use op if, which is how you do the inscription envelope, as well as removing the tap leaves so that you can only in taproot go up to 128 paths. Now, I think this was specifically targeted at another friend of ours, StuTXO, who made the Labitboo.
Yes, I've done some content around Labitboos. I will take some blame here and say I definitely provided a lot of wind behind the back of this goofy little JPEG scheme, because it's funny. They're cute little like bunny-like animals. It's great.
And just to explain, this arbitrary data encoding on chain, if that's how you classify this stuff, or spam, right? Like, or however you're looking at this, the way that this is being encoded on chain is not through an inscription, not through an op return, but with Taproot. When we got that back in 2021, there's something called Merkleized Abstract Syntax Trees, MAST, M-A-S-T for short. And what does that allow you to do? You can have one address that has like a Merkle tree that unfurls out, and you can have many different ways that you can spend your Bitcoin. You can go to a depth of 128 leaves. And when you spend from those addresses, you have to kind of walk down the Merkle tree and post data. So hypothetically, if someone, all of these hashes that you need to post to walk down the tree, when you put them together, look like a JPEG, that's what Labitboos are. So you go to the bottom of the Merkle tree. So you're going 128 levels unraveling and putting this in what's called the control block of a Taproot address. And the control block being you're navigating which spending condition within the Taproot tree you're going to.
Yeah.
Another, I don't think explicit intended consequence, but something that does happen here, this inherently breaks all BitVM garbled circuit implementations. If you are only able to do 128 possible ways a given Taproot address can spend, you cannot, and I'm going to, at a high level, say I'm not deeply read in on this, but understanding that the way the fraud proofs work is that you take every single segment of the logic of the fraud system and you encode that, and you're able to prove that someone lied to you. You need every single segment of the code available for review in all of the permutations, which means you need the trillions of possible ways that you can actually uncode and unravel this. If you only have 120, you can't do that. So it also breaks BitVM.
Okay, so let me pause you, because you haven't even like gone through the list of the things that breaks, whatever. But like, we'll come back to what it breaks. Are these trade-offs worth it? Maybe we won't even get that far. But like, okay, who wrote this PR?
We don't know officially. So there is a new there's a new pseudonym that was on Twitter, GitHub, the mailing list, and now the Knots Discord.
And Bitcoiners we love pseudonyms. We think we encourage pseudonymity for Bitcoin developers, but
Bitcoin does have a history of pseudonyms activating soft forks. So there was a pseudonym in 2017 called Shaolin Fry, who is the one who put forward the user activated soft fork code to actually activate SegWit. So this is actually somewhat of a time-honored tradition that an unnamed person comes forward that is able to do that. The name of this person is Dathon Ohm.
Dathon Ohm. Dathom space OHM, like the ohm electrical resistance,
which is metric. Their username. So resistance, right? So we don't know who this person is officially. I think someone would suspect that either it is with Luke's input or someone who is acting under the direction of Luke, because they took Luke's reply to someone else's mailing list thread as the jump off point to legitimize that this has reached to a level of kicking off with a BIP.
I'll support this speculation. Like any intuition would point that it's one of the few main characters that we often talk about and engage with on the subject of filtering. So it's, Dollars to Donuts, probably one of these folks.
Dollars to Donuts, someone who is either employed by Ocean and Knott's developer. I would say Dollars to Donuts, someone who's definitely has either written code specifically for Bitcoin Knott's, or someone who is a very loud vocal supporter about this stuff. And so there's a handful. I would say that if I listed off 6 names, there's probably an 85% chance I'm going to hit it with one of those 6 names.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it doesn't matter, right? At the end of the, you can understand their intention based on they wrote the code, but at the end of the day, put up the code. Now, the first thing I'd call it is there is no code yet. This is just a vibe post. So from there, where it gets more controversial is there's several things that are controversial. One, there is a lot of legal framing in the BIP. There's a lot of moral framing, and Bitcoin improvement proposals and Bitcoin code, strictly a software, it is not the place to kind of codify out legal frameworks or moral frameworks. It is just, this is a software project and you have to write the code as it exists.
Yeah. And yeah, to just piggyback off what you said, like if you were to look through and read through the proposal, you would find 2 or 3 dozen references to like legal action or saying this could be legally problematic if these transactions get into Bitcoin, and also appeal to an ambiguous moral authority. That is unconventional for any, like, I would say, seriously considered soft or any kind of fork discussion.
The word legal or illegal appears 23 times in the BIP.
Okay. Yeah. Which is a lot.
Which is a lot. I haven't done a look at all of the other ones I haven't seen yet. The word moral comes up 9 times.
Okay.
So there's a couple branches to walk off here, right? So someone is basically making a code change proposal, but not with code yet. They're saying that they're working on the implementation. It explicitly says to do in there. They've apparently started writing some code. Now, there's a couple problems with this. I think just as a general observation, the inclusion of legal and moral framing of this is problematic. Just because, as I said before, Bitcoin as a software project, the merits of the software project should exist as is. And if you start going to legal framing, all you need is for someone to say Bitcoin is illegal. And you're like, well, I guess it's all over then, right? Because like the whole point of this thing is that this is a system of rules, not rulers. It is anarchy encoded in a digital form. It is permissionless. And the moment you start citing legal theories, it just becomes more complicated, right? So I think just from a baseline framing, it is a losing framing to start those arguments. Additionally, a lot of the legal stuff is talking about how if illicit content of different types could appear on chain, independent of the fact that that stuff has already been put on Bitcoin forever. Bitcoin does not natively support like file exploration. If you download your blocks, like everything is kind of like garbled on your own disk anyway to prevent virus scanners from seeing snippets of Bitcoin data and thinking that it's malware. And it's also just like the point of this is not for you to be, you don't like open up your blocks folder and scroll through like a spreadsheet and look at the transactions.
Yeah. And for the listener, like everything bad that has existed or that you can put on Bitcoin has been put on Bitcoin in some capacity or another. And we're simply arguing over the definition of what qualifies as like the format for that particular stuff. And like,
exactly.
So this is like saying, well, of the particular narrowly defined format for the actual raw, completely unbroken up data, we don't want that. So it's kind of, again, it's already what I consider to be extremely loose like framing, but also like legal in or illegal in what jurisdiction? Like, you can't say Tibet's a free country in China, and you used to not be able to post certain WikiLeaks, Iraq war cable, Afghan war cables on Bitcoin. So, that kind of thing.
Another thing I specifically to that point, Charlie, is that you're now bringing a subjective lens to how Bitcoin works. And the fact that Bitcoin works is an objective system, right? That these are the rules and the systems. And to your point, the moment you start saying if it's legally like problem, like you now like, so exactly what you said, people have put like free Tibet on the Bitcoin blockchain. People have put the tank man photo on the Bitcoin blockchain. And like, is that now means that this is illegal? We need to start reorganizing around it. Additionally, you're now proposing this is a really important factor of the BIP is like, okay, let's say for a moment We're all in on this. We're going to turn this thing on. We're going to save Bitcoin. There are 2 proposed activation methods for this.
Yes. Yeah, let's get into this because this is the real insanity. I'll just come out and say I think this is batshit crazy.
Let's take the leap off the cliff together, right? Bonnie and Clyde, we're off the cliff. We're turning this thing on. Now, this is an important thing to talk about soft forks versus hard forks. An additional factor of this proposal is that for the next, it's a temporary soft fork in that it's only for a year. It's almost like an emergency pause to not let anything bad happen while a better solution is devised. During this time, Bitcoin cannot upgrade. If you were to upgrade, it would be a hard fork because this explicitly disables all of the upgrade hooks in Bitcoin.
As in, like, Bitcoin has these ways which are easy to upgrade. We've kind of built these in over the years to make it easier to talk and then execute soft forks or hard forks, but like basically upgrades. And it's basically saying those methodologies are frozen.
They all get frozen. So we jump off the cliff and we do this. Now, the idea is that code's going to be written and an activation client that enforces these rules are going to go live and people are going to start talking to mining pools, which is something we should get to because there's been some speculation about people hitting up mining pools about this. There are 2 activation methods. One is the proactive, where like over the next 2 to 3 months, we all get together and we say on this block height, we're turning on the rules, which is it's an important thing. When you're trying to coordinate a decentralized network, you need to give everyone time to update their software, make mining pools have to update their like infrastructure. Like it's not a trivial thing that you just like flip on overnight. The problem is the other method to activate this is called the reactive method, which means there is an ambiguity on if illicit, very bad content is put on chain. Immediately, that block will be invalidated. And when that block is invalidated, we're going to now emergency turn on the rules. And then we're going to fork immediately, causing a chain split. The BIP editor, the person writing, not the BIP editor, sorry, the author of this BIP has said this would cause a chain split. So let's just make the math easy. We're on block height 999,000. Everything's fine and happy. At block height 1,000,000, some really heinous stuff is put on chain. Here's what happens. The Bitcoin mining, the network keeps on running, right? Like, because nothing is broken. So you now have a subjective lens. And then let's say it happens at 1 o'clock in the morning Pacific time. Why Pacific time? Let's just say it's Coinbase, right? Like Coinbase, like the engineering team, like they have an emergency on overnight like team, but like they're not ready to like go do stuff. 6 hours goes by before they hear about this fork. They now need to roll back 30 blocks to invalidate that because every block builds on the previous. So if you're trying to remove this block with bad content from the chain, you need to delete it and any blocks that mine on top of it. So you're talking about easily. And so in 2013, there was a 30 block, I think it was 30 or 50 like block reorg that was happening because of a Berkeley. Like, there was a bug that split consensus. You're talking about doing that again today. And rather than it being like a software update or something you can understand, it's like every single block now you need to be on guard. And you have to go. And here's the other thing too, morally, rather than like the data exists and I'm not going to go look for it, you're now legal, like you're to be in consensus. You now, as someone who's running a Bitcoin node, has to go download and look and see that there's heinous content there that you never would have known or cared about otherwise. Because if it's not there and I don't care about it, what if someone says, oh, at block height 1,000,000, there's really bad stuff? Am I just going to trust another person told me that? Like, is it like if it's don't trust verify, which is the whole point of Bitcoin, is if it's a software stack and this rule says if bad content is put on there, you then fork, you're now making me as a person go and look for really bad content on chain to look at it, and then I have to go fork. Although I can't just take your word for it. If you're Charlie, like Rob, like there's really bad content, you need to.
There's a picture of a hamburger on block 1,000,000. Hamburgers are illegal, and so now you have to go like decode and like
and okay, Charlie,
picture of hamburger to like legal compliance, maybe too. If you're talking like Coinbase, yeah.
But you're making me look at it, and like I can't take your word for it because you're asking me to fork off the network. I'm not going to do that with my node unless I know I absolutely have to, right? So that's a whole quagmire of something. And then
on top of that, like Coinbase doesn't want to do it if Binance is going to do it. It's not going to do it if Kraken doesn't want to do it. So like they all now have to kind of be in a group chat to like coordinate an arbitrarily morally defined assessment of what's illegal, because what if Binance, a primarily Chinese company,
doesn't
wants
care.
to fork because it's free to bet? And America says, no, we're not really talking about like geopolitical debates. Like, this is ridiculous.
Exactly, right? And it's not even just the businesses. The mining pools also have to agree to this, right? Well, so in theory, you could have all of the businesses like invalidate a block, and the miners are like, shit, okay.
Yeah.
But what are they going to do by default? They're going to keep on building on the chain that they get paid out on. So
and
you have
the
to
longer
actually
they do that, the longer they do that, the more money everyone loses, probably. So it's literally
very much.
Yeah, it gets to be like, if you think about the game theory, it's not just like, okay, we don't want this picture of a hamburger and block 1 million. It's like, now we're 6 hours into it. That 6 turns into a day. Now we're talking tens of millions of dollars in just mining revenue.
All exchanges freeze deposits and withdrawals during this, right? Like, you can't actually transact anything because you don't know with certainty if someone deposits to you. Here's the other thing. If I'm a business, Jonathan Beer, the guy who runs the BitMEX research account, pointed this out. I could put illicit content on chain, and then the next block send $1 million to Coinbase, sell the Bitcoin, get dollars, take the dollars out, and then the chain rolls back. And since it all gets rolled back, I now have the Bitcoin and the money, right? It creates a very it's a bad incentive. You're incentivizing people to put bad content on chain to attack the network so you can double spend it, right? Like, it has not been thought out well at all.
Because typically when there's a fork, people put up all these safeguards to avoid this manipulation of the system. The replay attack is what it's called. And in this case, you can try to put how do you put up safeguards against if it could happen at any moment? So
everyone needs their own mempool monkey, as we all know. Mononaut repping the mempool shirt day. Everyone needs to hire their own mempool monkey to be able to sit on chain and look at every single byte as it comes across to make sure it's clean. Here's a funny thing that I actually noticed yesterday. What's not banned in any of this stuff in this fork proposal?
Oh, what's not banned, Rob?
Stamps. So my dark horse theory is that Mike in Space is out there and wrote a PR that bans every other picture protocol but his. And
I'm going to get Mike on here. I'm going to turn up, put him in the hot seat and ask him if he's Dathon Ohm.
You should.
And he's trying to stamp Bitcoin.
Random shot. One of my favorite clips from Bitcoin Twitter culture is him singing "Stuck Here in the Mempool with You." You've seen that clip? It's so good. Yeah. So good. But anyway, so this is all complicated, but also mining pools. So overnight, Chun, our space Bitcoiner, the one who flew up in the with SpaceX for the polar exploration.
He's been like every country. He's going to go to Mars eventually. He's got more money than God himself, or Bitcoin at least.
He runs F2 pool, very long time running pool. They're about 12% of the network hash rate. And he said, we're not running this. So you already have, and so the proponents of this have said, while it may cause a chain split, it won't cause a permanent fork because everyone will just coordinate and agree to our rules. The thing is they can't make everyone do that. So you're going to have two chains. You're going to have the chain. You also have to stop the network and freeze it for a while you do this coordination, start mining again. If you get a fraction of the hash rate to move over with you, you go from 10-minute blocks to hour-long blocks. And you have to go eat through multiple difficulty adjustments. We saw this with Bitcoin Cash in 2017. When they forked off, they had to actually do a hard fork because they had to add something called the emergency difficulty adjustment, which said if a block hadn't been found in a certain amount of time, you can emergency drop the difficulty. So at that point, that's a full hard fork. The whole network starts breaking apart if you're fragmenting hash rate. You need everyone to lockstep move together, which is why soft forks in general, even hard forks too, you need everyone to be largely aligned with a time in the future to give everyone time ready. So the idea that on a moment's notice, every single block could be a potential fork, it's not tenable from a governance perspective. It's just totally dead in the water.
I feel like we could loop on this subject a lot, but I think that gives the audience enough tools to kind of understand. I want to go back to what breaks, because we're still kind of discovering what breaks. I want to, you got AnchorWatch bags.
I do.
Just we got to disclose them, and you are everyone's favorite miniscript influencer.
That's right.
Do things related to AnchorWatch or miniscript just got to get cards on the table here? Do any of those things break with this? Do we know?
So nothing that current AnchorWatch customers use doesn't break at all because we use pay-to-witness script hash. So we don't use Taproot yet. But anyone who is using the miniscript compiler with Taproot, if they are not using tap leaves, it totally breaks. So there is if you use Taproot and you have one long Taproot script and you have multiple ways you can spend it, what do you use? Op if, because you're saying if this or that, right? It's how you have one Bitcoin address that can have two ways you can spend things. Think about any programming language. If this or that. This totally bricks that. And it bricks people's money who are currently on chain. It is confiscatory. So people who have money today secured are now frozen from being able to spend their money. So this is, and the pedantic argument is, it's not seizure, it's a temporary soft fork, it's only for a year. The whole point of Bitcoin is that it's my money and I can use it whenever I want. You can't tell me I can't, right? So this is explicitly violating user space, as it's called in computer development. You were going into where users have expected guarantees of how the software operates, and you're removing it from them as well.
It's like temporary quantitative easing. That we're only going to temporarily seize your money at the network level. This is people who've been using Bitcoin as money,
right,
using the existing tools and techniques that Bitcoin offers to help them program the security of their money. And this particular proposal would freeze those.
Yep. Be absolutely frozen.
And so I know this, maybe, so I'm reading through the GitHub here and I'm looking at the mailing list and okay, so this is why we discuss these things, so people can review and peer review and say, oh, you missed this, you missed that. I would like to think that even a hardcore pro filter person wants to try to respect those types of users and that type of use of money. So maybe there could be, and you see this, Dathon, the account which put this PR, said recently just posted on the mailing list this morning, this is Tuesday morning, okay, going to go back and maybe work on the draft of this, maybe update that, maybe implying trying to reduce some of those conditions. But Rob, is there just, I'm feeding you a bit of a rhetorical question. Is there, at some level, is this an intractable problem of preventing arbitrary data and the freedom of money? Could you talk about this?
I mean, it ultimately, it's unfortunate in that we've spent, I think, well over 2 years at this point in the filter discourse. And the point was always made, you're not going to be able to achieve this with filters. It was going to require a consensus change. There is progress now in that they're proposing a consensus change. Their argument would be, we did not need a consensus change until core version 30, which is malware, in their opinion, got pushed to the network. And now we have these large op returns. So now the network's under threat. And I say to that, why isn't the pull request only changing op return then? If this is about op return specifically, you could just do a PR that is just about op return, but they're going for everything because they're tacitly admitting we were right the entire time and that you had to make a consensus change for this to actually be effective. And now the next step is, the next part we made is you can make a consensus change. The first block, if this thing gets activated, will have JPEGs in it. It will unequively.
Oh, absolutely. I will do my best.
It's not even a question. Like the incentive, because here's the thing, you now have a fork. So if you have one Bitcoin and then it forks, you now have one Bitcoin on this pure Bitcoin and one Bitcoin on the unholy Bitcoin. You're now just having free Bitcoin that you can just go play around and burn with and troll
give me free money. So I'm going to yeet my, a good portion of my stack to figure out how to put JPEGs. I'll freaking hire a dev and pay them in my pure Bitcoin coins, and I'll get JPEGs out of it.
Exactly. Two closing thoughts, or I'm also available for more, but just two things I want to specifically.
There's good closing thoughts here.
This is tentatively going to be BIP 444. This was a little bit of the controversy around Luke is the original editor and maintainer of the Bitcoin improvement, the BIP repo, the Bitcoin improvement proposal repo. So people thought he was maybe self-assigning himself a number. It turns out John Attack, who's a great Bitcoin developer, in the internal notes already had that number working. So it seems like it's moving in that direction. Unfortunately, 4 sounds like death in Mandarin. So you're asking half the network hash rate based out of Asia to turn on the death fork. Not good marketing, not the move I would have made, but here is what it is. And then the other thing is that the pull request got a little spicy with people commenting, specifically Greg Maxwell, longtime Bitcoin contributor, saying that this pull request in this framing has been used as legal pressure to go to mining pools to get them to coercively follow this rule. I have heard from people talking that this has happened at multiple pools already, that they've been approached to with this kind of stuff. And I am not a firsthand party to that conversation. Greg publicly corroborates this, though, that mining pools are being approached by the team at Ocean around this stuff. So it's almost like a lawyer activated soft fork because it's out of legal pressure, which is a bold strategy. And you already have 12% of the network hash rate saying they're not doing it, which is F2 pool. So if you use that, if you say all of the non-US mining hash rate's not going to do it, then you split the hash rate. It's unfortunate because I think it's unnecessary escalatory. It gives way too much framing away to people who want to harm Bitcoin to even acknowledge or even entertain this kind of stuff. The fundamental premises I just outright reject. And at the end of the day, this is, will they actually fork? I'm speculating towards no. The fact that this happened right after core version 30 went live tells me that this was somewhat of the, I would say they lost the narrative battle, so they had to do something new. I don't think they'll actually fork, but they're looking for something to talk about. At this point, it's an attention economy.
What happens next? Like this, we're going to turn this episode around. This goes out Wednesday morning. What can the listener look to next? Where do they find their source of information and signal in this wild, crazy world of noise?
I would probably say what happens next, in my opinion, I think there's going to be a lot of can kicking around for a while. I think it's not a coincidence that after version 30 got launched, this is the next thing, because the whole motion was we're going to stop version 30. That didn't happen. So now the people that are opposing the way Bitcoin development is working right now need a thing to rally around. So this idea of the fork is something they want to rally around. So it gives them purpose and attention, right? I don't think it's going to go anywhere. If there is a fork, it's going to be such a small minority of hash rate. It's going to fall on its face pretty flat pretty quickly. Not even at the mining pools, because here's the great thing about a mining pool. The cost to switch to a new mining pool is almost nothing. So like if a mining pool makes the decision to pull this, like you just change in your fleet software where you're pointing your hash to and it's instantly fixed, right? So the asymmetry is not on the side of the pools being kingmakers. I think it's going to be a lot of talking and bantering, but at least we're now in a more honest framing of how this should all go.
Yeah.
Because it was always going to have to be a fork. So at least we're there now.
Yeah, that's kind of weird. It's like it took 2.5 years to get to what I consider to be an honest framing, which is thanks. You put up a software proposal that was always going to have to happen. Now we can actually argue about it. And I still think it's really dumb, but I'm glad you at least proposed. It took 2.5 years.
We knew within 2 weeks that it was going to have to require a fork to stop. Like I easily can pull up conversations from 2023, easily early 2023, that we were joking about this stuff having to be a fork. Yeah. Where to keep your eye on your news? Blockspace Media. Maybe a pretty good spot, I would just say.
Rob's Twitter handle.
Yeah, my Twitter handle, Rob1Ham, ROB, the number 1 HAM. So Twitter would be a good spot. If you're interested, you can go to the Bitcoin developer mailing list. You can just type into Google Bitcoin developer mailing list. You should see that in there. You probably could find the GitHub pull request. I'd advise just watch. If you're gonna participate, be polite. Like you don't need to be aggressive or aggro or anything. But I would say if you're just learning about this stuff, just reading through, you can look through all the comments and all the things yourself. Those would be the big places: the mailing list, the GitHub repo, Blockspace Media, Twitter handle.
Yeah. Thanks. That's it. See you all next fork.